Sky HD box. This is RF out repair, and if this video is published, then that means I've been successful, and I'm not guaranteed to be successful. What we're looking at now is the back panel, so you can see the model and see that it's a Samsung one, but it's the HD Plus box. To repair the central pin from these RF out plugs or sockets, I'm going to attempt to solder a piece of wire to here, and if I do the other one to there. The most important one is this one, because this is the one with the voltage supply. The back panel tells us it's 9 volts, 75 milliamp supply is also sent down using a pin out of the middle of a plug, a normal coaxial aerial plug, and I've put some wire down the middle of that pin, and hopefully this wire will reach through and into the circuit board underneath, and I'll be able to solder it onto the track. Already the track is lifting, so I guess what's happened is someone has been a little bit severe with the plug when they're putting it in and out of here. It's broken off the pin, but also sheared the connection between the central pin and the bit that protrudes into the track. In order to gain access to that, I've had to remove the back panel, and I'll show you the screws that go into it as I do the reassembly. There's a connector that connects into the motherboard there. You don't have to take off this little board which holds these, but there are quite a few other screws to undo. I've also had to take the screening covers from either side of that module. If I wasn't repairing this, then the answer would be to replace that whole module, and that's got about 5 connections onto the motherboard. But I'm going to try and effect a repair, so there's no need to find a source of that module. Okay, I'm struggling. I can't get in because the SCART sockets are so close. It makes it very difficult to do manoeuvring. That means I've got 9 solder joints to unsolder under here. 4 of them are just holding the device itself in the physical, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, 7 electrical connections underneath there to undo. I'm going to have to take that off if I'm going to stand any chance at all of making a repair to the RF out sockets. Right, with the repair done and checked with a meter, that is new pins fitted inside and soldered through with wire to there. One solution is to use hollow brass tube to replace the pin, and then put flexible wire down the centre of the tube and solder it onto the circuit board. So these RF units are shielded, and there are 2 pieces of metal, one that fit either side. They're a tight clip fit on in order to make good electrical contact and provide some screening. The next bit is to return the main board to the case, and I'll point out the screws which hold it down. And but before I'm returning it, there has been some water damage to this board. Probably a cup of tea or coffee has been spilt on it at some time. My understanding is that hadn't affected its operation after that had dried out. So but I will clean it before returning it. There are 4 screws which hold the main board in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 of the screws you can see with the hard drive fitted, but the 4th one, which is up in this corner over here, you can't see while the hard drive is fitted. As well as the screws, there are several connectors. This one, just a ribbon cable, which is, it's not a zero insertion force socket, is it? Oh, it might be. I'll have to release that socket. And here, from the power supply board, there's a connector to the main board, and that has a little part there that you press to help release it, which locks it in place. So I'm going to insert that ribbon cable. There's also this plug which connects the is it the USB? I think it's the USB port to the main board over there. The other item that needs to be fitted, removed, and I'm trying to reassemble it in the reverse order of assembly, is the back panel. There are a number of screws which hold this in place. It also clips in place, and the nuts around the satellite cable sockets, which come around these sockets over here. So the back panel screws are one at either end. One that holds the mains input socket, one that's holding the RF batch of sockets, one that holds the SCART sockets, one above the HDMI socket, and that's about it. You do not need to remove the 3 screws over this socket panel here, and you will have already removed the screw for the lid by this stage. And there is another ribbon cable which connects this panel here with those plugs and sockets to the main board. I marked it before taking it out just in case I wasn't sure about orientation. These are not zero insertion force sockets, so you can just unplug that, and this ribbon cable is stiff enough to just be reinserted. The next stage then is the fitting of the hard drive, and which is this device, which goes in that way round. I've got that upside down, sorry. That way round with the fan facing that way. And the fitting of the card reader, the other card reader. One card reader is mounted onto the main board, and the other card reader sits above the main board like that. The hard drive is held in with 4 screws, but it also fits over these rubber shock absorbers or vibration absorbers, which means that even once you've undone the screws, it can feel as though it's quite stiff and doesn't want to move out of place. Make sure, of course, before you fit it that you've reinserted the power supply sockets and the ribbon cable from the front display. Once you've fitted the hard drive, you will see that there's a SATA serial ATA cable which attaches to the main board down here, and that there's a 2-wire plug that attaches the fan to the main board down there. I'm just going to fit those screws now, and the screws which hold the other card reader, and that is reinserted here. Sorry, I didn't have the camera looking at it. So this is the card reader. The other card reader sits above this part here and is connected to the motherboard by a ribbon cable, and that's just held by 2 screws to the chassis. A screw there, a screw there. There is a power supply connector to the hard drive, which will need to be reattached or removed if you're reversing this operation. And that, so far, I think is all the main connectors. I've got the hard drive screwed in. I've screwed in the card reader. I've also realised that the case screws are standardised on black screws rather than silver. Samsung very thoughtfully have standardised on just maybe two different types of screws. Silver screws for holding the internal componentry together, black screws for holding the case together, most of them the same size. There are some slightly shorter ones, so there isn't too much to worry about in terms of remembering which screws go where. But I did use some silver screws in the back panel, but I've replaced those with black screws now. Next stage. I did miss the nuts which hold the dish input sockets to the rear panel. Well, they're held onto the main board, and this just stiffens everything up. There is a couple of thin washers which you have to shake off because they catch on the threads, and then a couple of nuts which need to be spun on and given a little tweak up. I just use a pair of pliers rather than a spanner or anything. And as far as I know, that just about completes the back panel. Now ready to move on to the fitting of the lid. And this doesn't have to be terribly tight. I don't want to scratch it. And I'm looking forward to trying it. The repair has worked. Silver screw there. For good electrical screening, the lid clips on quite tightly. There are a number of places where it fits into the back panel, clips over the case, sides. There's a ridge there, and you can see there's provision at this point for a screw just to hold it tightly. It's that side, and just making sure it's clipped properly. Those springs meant to go at the back, I think they are, and that clips in there. So we have a couple of screws to put into the case on either side, and then we can also drop the keypad panel on and fit the keypad panel in place onto the top lid. In fact, I probably ought to screw the sides on first with those two screws. Whoops, yes, one at each side at the back. At this stage, it should be possible to test the machine before fitting the plastic outer case. There isn't a base, but there is a front and top and two side panels to be fitted. This is the what you will see from the outside, the main case. It is actually in two parts, but I've not found it necessary to separate the two parts. You can see this will come apart all along the front. Just going to now slide that down over the metal case. At the back of the plastic case there are lugs which go into these slots on the top there. They've automatically gone in. Be careful because we are sliding onto a set of switches, and if you turn it over on the front you'll see these three parts there which click on. I'm just going to gently ease this back on because I don't want to damage any of the switch panel, so I won't hit it with a rubber mallet. But that's going in there on the back, that's going on the front. That's clicked, clicked, that's clicked. and I can now, I think, insert, there's one screw that goes into the back. It doesn't seem to need to hold anything else. Something there not gone down. Oh yes, that's into there. And then there are a couple of other screws to put into the case. So this screw in the middle of the top holds the metal lid in place, doesn't actually attach to the plastic, but then there are a couple of places where screws go through the plastic and into the metal case. That will begin to hold this on, and that's just one down here. Let me make sure I've got that lined up properly, and the equivalent one on the other side. It's not quite fully on. Let's just make sure I've got that clicked in properly there. The sides in. Okay, correction. I think I'm wrong about there being one on the end. I think all we have now are 6 screws to fit along the here. These just hold the, what I guess would have been top and bottom halves together. Goes in nicely down there. It's a magnetic screwdriver, so fortunately it holds the screw, and that's 3 on each side. That just tightens everything up and holds it together, and I think the end panels just click into place. We'll just try that in a moment, see if I've got this right. And beauty of a magnetic screwdriver there. Right. I'll see. Just making sure it all looks right. Right. Let's check this. Opens. That opens and closes nicely. Right then. So, last thing. 2 side panels, and fortunately they came off without breaking the tags. And in fact what I did was, before removing these side panels, I undid those 6 screws to ease the top and bottom halves apart, so that when I unclipped the side panels, it didn't in fact break off any of the tags that are on there. I don't know, you might be lucky, you might be able to get the side panel out without breaking the plastic tabs. Don't know if there's any difference between the left and right hand side panel. I'll soon find out. I didn't, of course, fit the side panels before tightening up the side screws. Okay, so I think nothing rattling, no leftover screws. It's always a good sign. Now we can try it, but that is basically the assembly and disassembly. So just to reiterate, you've seen what I did. In fact, when I reassembled, there was a little bit in reverse order, because before clipping out these side panels, I actually loosened the 6 bolts, 3 down each side underneath, which made it much easier to spring out the side panel without breaking anything. And then the disassembly is just the reverse of that assembly. Some of the things are a bit tight. It's meant to be a good fit. Hope that's helpful.